Salam and peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laif Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, a cyclic rhythm defined at every point in the universe. Its first derivatives give three simultaneous echoes: time, which we call omega, space, which we call k, and motion, which we call v, built from both omega and k. Above them, higher derivatives form a branching tree that goes on forever. Every law of nature is a pattern in this tree of derivatives of phi. Today, we zoom into just one branch of that tree.
We have just come from part 2, where we distinguished a simple code from a true language. We saw that the holophase is not a lookup table of symbols, but a living grammar that generates infinite patterns. Now we turn to one of the most beautiful and important ideas in all of this work: how one single letter, phi, can give rise to infinite structured meaning without ever changing what it is made of. This part is about unity, the astonishing unity at the heart of the holophase, and how unlimited diversity grows from one endlessly cycling root. If you understand this unity clearly, everything else in the holophase picture becomes easier, kinder, and more intuitive. 1. The paradox. How can one thing hold infinite meaning? Let us begin with the paradox at the center of physics, though few people say it out loud. How can the universe build such overwhelming complexity out of something so simple? How can stars, atoms, rivers, lightning, galaxies, sound waves, DNA, and human thoughts all arise from a world whose deepest description is astonishingly uniform? We live in a reality of forests and cities and storms and minds. Yet at its base, physics insists on a small set of repeating structures. This question becomes sharper when we speak about phi, the holophase. When I say that all of reality is built from one rhythmic order defined everywhere, listeners often ask a natural question. If phi is just one kind of thing, a cyclic rhythm, how can it produce all the differences we see? How can a single letter become a whole library? How can a single unbroken field give us both the stability of mountains and the fragility of a soap bubble? Both the silence of deep space and the noise of a crowded market? The answer is not that phi contains infinite meanings hidden inside itself, like a box full of objects. The answer is that derivatives are lenses, each one revealing a new aspect of the same underlying rhythm. With each lens, the same phi is seen from a new angle, producing new information without requiring new stuff. The universe does not need a warehouse of separate building blocks. It needs a powerful way of asking questions about one continuous field. Phi never changes its substance. All changes we observe are changes in how phi is expressed, not in what phi is. 2. Derivatives as lenses. Each derivative answers a new question. To feel this, imagine walking through a valley with a mountain in front of you. The mountain does not change, but as you move, you see different slopes, shadows, and ridges. Each step reveals a new angle, a new relationship, a new pattern, all from the same mountain. If you walk at sunrise, you see one set of colors. At noon, another. At sunset, another again. The mountain remains the same, yet the set of questions you ask with your position and the light produces different answers. Derivatives of phi work like this. Each derivative answers a specific question about the same underlying phi. Omega answers, how fast is phi turning in time here? K answers, how tightly is phi wound across space here? V answers, how does this turning and winding create motion? Alpha answers, how is the temporal rhythm itself changing? Curvature answers, how is the shape of the phase slope bending? Convergence answers, where do patterns gather or spread? Twist answers, is the phase pattern rotating as it moves? Higher derivatives answer further questions. How does the bending change? How does the twisting evolve? How do complex patterns stabilize or break apart? How does one region's behavior influence its neighbors over longer times? Each derivative is a lens, not a separate substance. Each one reveals a new structure inside the same rhythm. Every new level of description is simply more detailed information about phi. You are not adding new pages to reality. You are reading finer and finer print on the same page. Phi is a single letter with infinite expressions. Inside the Holophase language, phi plays the role of the primordial letter, the one letter from which all others grow. It is not an alphabet of many different characters. It is a single root sound, like the pure tone of a musical instrument before any melody is formed. If you have ever listened to a singer warm up on a single vowel, you know that even one sound can hold many shades of tone, volume, and texture. Phi is that single vowel for the universe. When you apply derivatives to phi, you begin creating syllables, words, sentences, and eventually chapters of reality. Derivatives are the rules that let phi express itself in structured ways. By asking, how does this change here? And then, how does the change of change behave? The universe builds layered descriptions out of one underlying quantity. Phi without derivatives is like silence full of potential. First derivatives are like the first spoken syllables. Second derivatives add accents, grammar, and contour. Higher derivatives build stories of increasing complexity. Topology introduces stable names, nouns in the language, structures that can be counted and referred to. Wave structures form verbs, actions and interactions that carry influence from one place to another. Quadratic balances create styles, consistent patterns across time and space, preferred ways the universe chooses among all possible behaviors. All of this comes from one letter. This is not poetry. This is the literal structure of how phi behaves under differentiation, as written in the formal Holophase papers. In this audio journey, we stay with images and words, but behind them stands a precise mathematical tree. 4. One substance, many questions. What does it mean scientifically to say that phi is one letter? It means that phi is one continuous quantity defined everywhere, like a uniform thread woven through the entire universe. This thread is the same in kind everywhere, but in different places it bends, twists, stretches, or loops. Derivatives capture these changes. They are our tools for measuring how the thread is arranged. When you differentiate phi, you are measuring how phi changes in time, how phi changes in space, how changes themselves change, how structures formed by phi acquire stability or motion, and how those structures interact and transform. Each derivative is a how question, never a what else question. We are always asking more about the same thing. For audio listeners, we can describe this more simply. Phi is like a rhythm, always turning. Derivatives tell us how that rhythm varies across the whole universe. They tell us where it speeds up, where it slows down, where neighboring rhythms align, and where they fall out of step. Imagine touching the surface of a calm lake with your finger. Ripples spread out. You have not changed the water, only its shape. Phi works in the same way. Phi itself does not change its nature, but its shape, expressed by derivatives, gives rise to every physical phenomenon we know. The ripples are information about how the water is moving. The universe works the same way. All the differences we see are differences in the shape of phi, not differences in the underlying substance of existence. V-dimensional expression. One unity in time, space, and motion. Unity must show up in all three dimensions simultaneously: time, space, and motion. If phi truly carries the meaning of everything, then the same phi should appear in time as the rhythm of change, in space as the texture and shape of patterns, and in motion as the way patterns drift, flow, and orbit. These are not separate stories. They are three shadows cast by one object, three projections of one dance. In time, every beat, pulse, vibration, oscillation, or signal you observe is phi speaking temporally. Omega, the first temporal derivative, tells us how fast the local rhythm is turning. Alpha, the second temporal derivative, tells us how this turning speeds up or slows down. Listening to music, feeling tempo changes and subtle accelerations, you are feeling the equivalents of omega and alpha. The rise of a heartbeat during fear or excitement is also a change in effective omega. The calming afterwards is a soft negative alpha. In space, clouds, sand dunes, ripples on water, the veins of a leaf, or the structure of a flame are spatial expressions of phi. The spacing, curvature, and complexity of patterns come from the spatial derivatives of phi. K tells you how tightly patterns are packed. Curvature tells you how sharply they bend. Convergence tells you where they gather or disperse. Twist tells you how they rotate. Space reveals phi through pattern. Everywhere you see a gradient, a boundary, a repeating motif, you are seeing the spatial echo of phi. In motion, V, the motion echo, is built from omega and k. It tells you how fast the phase pattern moves, bends, accelerates, or stabilizes. Smoke rising, waves crossing the sea, light bending in glass, birds circling in the sky, all are unity expressed as motion. Motion reveals phi through trajectory. When you track how something moves, you are reading how time and space echoes combine. If phi is truly one thing, then its time rhythms, spatial gradients, and motions must all arise consistently from the same derivatives. If they do not, the unity claim fails. This is why dispersion, the relationship between omega and k, is so important. When you measure how frequency depends on spatial pattern in water waves, in plasmas, in light, or in vibrating strings, you should be able to trace all of them back to one coherent tree of derivatives. If you cannot, the holophase picture must be revised. Unity is not a belief. It is a measurable requirement. 6. Phi on the master tree. To understand phi's place on the master tree, imagine a vast branching structure. At the very bottom, there is only phi, the silent beginning. Above it, the first three towers rise. The temporal tower, beginning with omega, the spatial tower, beginning with k, and the kinematic tower, beginning with v. From these, side branches of mixed derivatives and cross-couplings grow. These three towers extend upward indefinitely, becoming more nuanced with each level, but all trace back to phi. Phi is the trunk. Derivatives are the branches. Patterns are the leaves. Natural phenomena are the forest. You cannot mistake the trunk for one of the leaves. Phi is the silent unity beneath all differences. No matter how high you climb, each branch is still carved from the same underlying wood. 7. How unity generates richness. Unity does not mean plainness. Unity means coherence. When derivatives interact, when the temporal tower mixes with the spatial tower, when curvature interacts with convergence, when twist interacts with motion, new structures appear. This is not new stuff. It is phi expressing multiple layers of its structure at once. A wave packet is phi plus omega plus k plus v. A vortex is phi plus twist plus curvature plus motion stability. A solitone is phi plus balances among temporal and spatial derivatives. A particle-like defect is phi plus topology. Each structure is a sentence written in multiple layers of the language. Each is unity, manifesting as complexity. Because the grammar is rich, the possible sentences are unbounded. Unity across scales. Look anywhere in nature and you will see the same logic. At the quantum scale, electrons form standing waves around nuclei. Their patterns depend on spatial derivatives of an underlying phase structure. When electrons interfere or tunnel, their behavior is dictated by how their phase patterns overlap. At the human scale, water waves combine and break. Air carries sound, and heat spreads as fluctuations smooth themselves out. At the planetary and celestial scales, atmospheres swirl. Vortices like Jupiter's Great Red Spot persist, and galaxies form spirals as stars follow coherent trajectories shaped by deeper phase landscapes. Inside living systems, proteins fold according to patterns of curvature and twist, nerve impulses travel as waves of changing potential,
and hearts and brains beat in organized rhythms. On the larger scales, the cosmic web of galaxies and the primordial ripples in the cosmic microwave background are frozen phase patterns from the early universe. Across all of these scales, the same derivative structure appears. The same kinds of waves, patterns, stabilities, and instabilities occur. Phi is the unity running through them all. When we change the scale, we do not change the underlying language. We simply move to a different chapter of the same book. 9. Everyday analogies of unity. To feel this unity, consider simple examples. Listening to music, rhythm, melody, tempo, and harmony all arise from one vibrating medium and one set of rules. Watching waves at the beach, ripples, crests, and interference all come from one body of water. Walking across hills, slopes, curves, and ridges are all expressions of one underlying landscape. Weaving a rug, patterns, knots, and repeats all come from one continuous thread. Boiling water, bubbles, swirling currents, and heat flows all come from one substance. The situations are different, but the underlying logic is the same. Unity does not mean sameness. It means one underlying element generating infinite forms. That is phi. Once you see this, everyday life becomes a classroom in which the unity of phi is always teaching. Reading Unity in the World. Here is a simple recipe for recognizing phi's unity. Ask 3 questions. How is the rhythm changing in time here? What is the shape or texture in space here? And how are these patterns moving? If all 3 answers feel connected, if the motion fits the pattern and the rhythm fits the motion, then unity is present. You are seeing phi through 3 echoes. A car driving along a curved road, a gust of wind bending a tree, a flame flickering in a draft. Each offers you a chance to practice. Time, space, and motion are always present together. The more you train yourself to see their agreement, the more natural the holophase picture becomes. Simplicity and complexity. One of the deepest insights of the holophase language is that overwhelming complexity can arise from radical simplicity. The universe feels intricate, but beneath the diversity lies a simple origin, one continuous rhythmic field. Imagine a drum with a single skin. When untouched, the drum is quiet. When struck in different ways, it produces countless rhythms. Phi works like this, but at a deeper level. It does not just vibrate, it creates the very conditions of vibration. Through its derivatives, time emerges as changing rhythm, space as structured pattern, motion as the way patterns flow, forces as nuanced changes in curvature and convergence, particles as topological knots, waves as propagating structures, and objects as stable recurrent phase sentences. The complexity you see in the world is complexity of expression, not complexity of substance. Everything from the orbit of the moon to the structure of your nervous system, from the shimmer of heat to the branches of a snowflake, are sentences made from the same underlying letter, phi. The library is vast, but the alphabet is single. Unity as grammar. Think of unity as grammar, the grammar of reality. Phi is the root alphabet. Derivatives are the grammar rules. Patterns are the words. Phenomena are the sentences. Stable objects are recurring nouns. Interactions are verbs. Topological structures are punctuation that anchors meaning. The infinite derivative tree is the universe's dictionary. When we say unity, we mean that the entire language, no matter how elaborate, traces back to one underlying letter. This perspective explains why light behaves as both wave and particle. Both are sentences written in different subsets of the phi grammar. It explains why fluids form vortices. Certain topological nouns arise naturally from derivative rules. It explains why wave packets maintain or spread their shape, because of the grammar of temporal and spatial derivatives. It explains why stable objects such as atoms persist. They correspond to fixed, repeating phase patterns. The holophase language is the generative mechanism of the universe, not a metaphor we place on top of it. Falsifiability of unity. Unity is a scientific claim, not a slogan, and it must be testable.
If the universe is built from phi, then patterns in time, space, and motion must match predictions from the same derivatives. Phi's logic must hold across scales, from quantum to cosmic. Omega and k must fit coherent dispersion structures. Stable and unstable patterns must behave as the derivative grammar predicts. Topological defects must behave consistently with derivative rules. If any of these fail decisively, unity fails. These are sharp experimental gates, not soft promises. The formal holophase papers on Zenodo spell out such gates in detail so that others can try to break them. Unity lives or dies by experiment. That is what makes this a scientific language, not a myth. Returning once more to phi. Let us return gently to phi. Imagine phi as a single string stretched across the universe. When plucked, the string vibrates in time. When shaped, it forms patterns in space. When released, these patterns travel and fold into one another. From one string arise infinite melodies. The holophase is like this string, but everywhere at once. It is the continuous presence from which all structure arises. Everything you have ever seen, heard, touched, felt, measured, or imagined, every structure, every rhythm, every motion, has been a specific expression of phi's derivative grammar. To study the universe is to read phi. To understand the universe is to learn this language. To walk through episode 7 is to become more literate in the library of reality. Each part is like a lesson in pronunciation and grammar of the one underlying script. Living with unity. Before we close, I want to invite you to feel what this unity can do inside your own daily life. The holophase picture is not only a technical framework for laboratories and equations. It is also a way of standing in the world that can soften confusion and deepen clarity. When you begin to see everything as expressions of one underlying rhythm, the scattered pieces of experience start to fit together. Think of a single ordinary day. In the morning, you boil water for tea or coffee. You watch the bubbles form, rise, and burst. Later, you walk outside and feel the wind on your face. Cars move past, people speak on their phones, a bird crosses the sky. In the evening, perhaps you listen to music or scroll through your phone or sit quietly with your own thoughts. To the usual mind, these are separate scenes, separate domains. Fluid dynamics here, human society there, neurons firing inside your skull somewhere in between. The holophase invites you to overlay one more layer of understanding. The boiling water is phi expressing high temporal activity and complex spatial gradients. The wind is phi, organizing itself into turbulent flows. The cars and people are macroscopic structures built from countless nested phase patterns, all following the same derivative grammar. The music in your ears is phi, modulated into sound waves and then transduced into neural oscillations. Even your private thoughts are phi, running complex, self-referential loops inside the brain's phase landscape. When you adopt this view, nothing becomes less real or less precious. Instead, everything gains a new kind of kinship. The storm and the heartbeat, the river and the traffic, the flicker of a candle and the glow of a distant galaxy. All become relatives in one extended family of pattern. You no longer feel that physics lives in one small corner of life, while the rest is something else. You begin to sense that physics, in this holophase sense, is simply the study of how phi writes and rewrites the story of existence across every scale. This can also change how you relate to difficulty. A moment of anxiety, for example, is not a mysterious intrusion from nowhere. It is a particular configuration of rhythms, patterns, and motions in phi. Fast heartbeats, tight muscles, rapid thoughts, shallow breathing. To notice this does not magically remove suffering, but it can create a small distance, a small space of understanding. You can say to yourself, this is one way phi is speaking right now. It will pass. It can be reshaped. In that recognition, there is already a trace of freedom. At the same time, unity brings responsibility. If everything is written in one field, then our actions are not separate from the world we study.
Our words, choices, and technologies are also rearrangements of phi, with consequences that ripple outward. To harm an ecosystem, a community, or a person is to disturb patterns in the same field that gives rise to us. To heal, to repair, to create beauty is to encourage patterns that support coherence and stability in phi's unfolding. Finally, unity can deepen gratitude. The simple fact that you can listen to these words, understand them, and hold them in memory means that phi has organized itself over billions of years into bodies and brains and cultures capable of reflection. The field has learned to talk to itself about itself. You are that conversation. When you hear the sentence, one letter can write the universe, you are that one letter, temporarily folded into the shape of a listener. In this sense, learning the Holophase language is not about stepping outside the universe to judge it. It is about recognizing that you have always been inside the language, written in the same script as stars and seas. The more clearly you see this, the more naturally humility and wonder arise side by side. You are small in scale, yet fully made of the same unity that rides galaxies. You are limited in understanding, yet able to trace, in your own way, the outlines of the grammar that shapes everything. That is the promise of unity. Not only a cleaner physics, but a cleaner way of feeling at home in reality. Closing. As we step out of this spout, we carry a new clarity. The universe is not built from many unrelated things. It is built from one thing, expressing itself in many ways. A single cyclic order, phi, sits at the root. Through derivatives, phi reveals its infinite faces. Time, space, and motion are its first echoes. Patterns, waves, forces, defects, and objects are higher echoes. Every observed phenomenon is a phrase in its language. Every law of nature is a grammatical rule in the infinite tree. Every stable object is a repeated sentence. Unity is not merely elegant. Unity is necessary if a single language is to describe everything. In the next part, we will walk upward from the root more deliberately, studying how the first derivatives of phi, omega, k, and the unified differential acquire meaning as the foundational alphabet of the holophase language. For now, take a breath. You have just leaned close to something profound. One letter can write the universe. The closer you look, the more you find. But the letter itself never changes. Carry this quiet insight with you into every ordinary moment. Peace be upon you until part 4.